It all kicked off at Manchester Airport on Thursday, and I don't mean in duty-free. A police officer has been suspended after footage emerged of him kicking and stamping on a possible suspect's head. Shocking scenes, I'll grant you, but the internet, as always, decided to ignore any context, with a judgment being made following 10 seconds of selective video footage. However, since then, new footage has emerged of what happened in the lead-up to that infamous stamp, which of course woke progressives are desperate to characterise as a George Floyd moment, when a black man in America died after an officer knelt on his neck. That, of course, led to the rise of the Black Lives Matter movement. The George Floyd case is very tragic, but contested by some, and the fallout following it has set US race relations back by decades. So maybe we shouldn't do that here. This new shocking clip, courtesy of the Manchester Evening News, shows 3 police officers being violently assaulted, including, we understand, 1 female police officer who suffered a broken nose. Now, call me old-fashioned, but I think that if I violently attacked and hospitalised 3 police officers in an airport, I might get something back. I may come to physical harm myself. Kind of lost my human rights at that point, if you know what I mean. It's been reported that armed officers feared that the alleged suspects may have tried to get hold of their firearms in an airport, not an unreasonable concern. By the way, this wouldn't be a story almost anywhere else in the world. But here in the UK, the police doing their job and dealing with alleged criminals in a security-sensitive environment like an airport led to 200 angry people gathering outside Rochdale Police Station and a campaign by the self-styled TikTok lawyer Ahmed Yaqub to defend these men, saying nothing can justify a police officer kicking a defenceless man in the head. Can't it? You tell me. This drama has seen the suspended police officer subjected to trial by social media, with keyboard warriors online already calling for his sacking. Now, these actions may or may not have been justified, and if something happened that shouldn't have happened, the officer must face the consequences. There is an criminal investigation ongoing, and I agree with the Manchester Mayor Andy Burnham, who has said that we should not rush to judgment. But the speed with which this cop has been hung out to dry without knowing the full story speaks volumes. Who would be a police officer in 2024? In the end, the ridiculous idea of defund the police and the demonisation of cops, which has been a disaster in America's great cities following George Floyd, is now reaching our shores. If cops get attacked just for doing their job, a dangerous and now thankless one, who could blame them for rolling over to the criminals and letting them do their worst next time? We've seen what happens in America if you politicise policing and punish officers for serving out their duties. You get a breakdown in law and order. And it's already started here. We saw it with those riots in Leeds, where officers were effectively powerless to stop the violence and disorder. The fear of inflaming community tensions or being accused of racism is making their job nigh on impossible. Remember the good old days when breaking the law got you arrested and banged up? During those riots in Leeds, officers sat in their cop cars and looked on as a double-decker bus was set on fire. Mob rule is here, folks. We've seen it at the so-called peace marches, which are suffused with anti-Jewish hate. We saw it in Leeds, and it is becoming a feature of British life. Is it any wonder that record numbers of police officers are quitting? Who could blame them? Home Office statistics show that of the 9,000 officers who left forces in England and Wales last year, more than half voluntarily resigned. Currently, 1 in 5 police officers is considering handing in their truncheon. This tells its own story. Policing is an ugly business, and we're lucky that others are willing to do it on our behalf. But it's getting harder. The way we treat modern police officers is what I call criminal. There is definitely more to that story than meets the eye, but I think that cops are being demonised. I think they're being punished for doing their job. Let me know your thoughts, and I'll get to your opinions in a moment. But first, tonight's top pundits, former Tory MP and farmer Neil Parish, journalist and communications advisor Linda Jubilee, and political consultant and Labour Party activist Susie Stride. Linda, let me start with you. Who would be a police officer in 2024?
Who indeed? It is terribly, terribly distressing to see this, but it's an inescapable fact that when Sir Robert Peel set up the police force, he talked about policing by consent. And that has been a central tenet of policing for hundreds of years now. And I know that it's really tough for police officers not to overreact or even react in difficult situations, but they are trained not to do that, particularly in the elite squads, for example, those police officers that are sent to airports. So it's understandable that this police officer or several police officers lost their temper, but at the end of the day, they have to be able to control that if we are going to govern successfully. And I speak as someone who does media training for the emergency services. I know what they have to deal with, but it's a difficult job. As you say, who'd want to be a police officer these days?
Definitely. Briefly, if you can, Neil Parish, your reaction to how the police have been sort of treated by the media regarding what happened in Manchester on Thursday.
Yeah, I mean, I think the police must be very concerned because we do need a good police force and we do need to give it our support. I absolutely agree that, you know, the level of violence was too much, but I think lost their temper. I also think that I would take the judgment of Andy Burnham because although I was not a Labour MP, I knew him when he was in the House of Commons and he's got very sound judgment. And so, therefore, let's really put this in question. It's really, at the end of the day, is it, you know, this policeman lost his temper, he reacted wrongly, but should he be drummed out of the police force? I think that is the issue, really. I think it needs to be looked at very seriously, but that will be an interesting decision, and that's where I think, you know, we need to give the police our support. And I'd be interested to see what comes out of that inquiry.
Most definitely. Susie Stride, let me quote Dan Hodges, the excellent columnist at The Mail on Sunday, who tweeted the following: re Manchester, some people say the guy was on the ground, it was still unjustified. If you assault a police officer as brutally as we saw in that clip, you deserve to get some back. End of.
I mean, I think, look, it is complex, and I agree with what Neil was saying here. Like, I'm inclined to listen to what Andy Burnham is saying, you know, and I just think it's really important, isn't it? We need to be really reasoned and calm in how we respond to these things, and we need to kind of wait to get all the evidence, because we've already seen what's happened. You know, a really quick clip came out, everyone reacted, and then actually there's actually a slightly bigger context here that people hadn't seen. So I think we just need to kind of wait and listen and be calm and be measured in how we respond. Ultimately, we can't have violence, you know, towards... I'm not happy with what I see in that clip of someone's head being stamped on. That's not OK. At the same time, we can't have a woman being punched in the face and her nose being broken and there not be a reaction to that. And also, we do need to make sure that we are looking after, you know, we want to make sure that in the future we have police officers in this country that feel supported. But in order for that to happen, we do need to have proper accountability. But I think the right thing here is to wait and to be measured in how we respond to this, and as we see more evidence come out.
And on that, we can agree.